Ladies and gentlemen, it is 3:14 p.m. on Saturday, April 4th, 2020. I am Master Thich Thong Lai. I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all people in the country and overseas compatriots. I would like to spend some of my free time today to answer some of the questions from my disciples. The first question asks why all American allies, such as England, Germany, France, South Korea, and Japan, simultaneously withdrew all their consular personnel from Vietnam. Yesterday, around the same time, the U.S. consul also left Vietnam. These disciples asked me to explain the reason that the United States and its allies, such as the United Kingdom, France, Germany, South Korea, and Japan, closed their consulate at the same time. They called on their expatriates to leave Vietnam immediately. And the second question is regarding the issue of Captain Crozier of the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt was released from his duties. Please listen to me answer these questions. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States was not recently calling on their expatriates to leave Vietnam and China, but for the entire week of the United States, Secretary of State was the first to call all American citizens and residents from around the world to return to the U.S. as soon as possible. Soon after that, the British consulate in Hanoi followed in his footsteps and called on British citizens to leave Hanoi immediately. From a reliable source, the U.S. consulate and all the staff members who were working in the U.S. consulate in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh are closed and withdrew to the United States. So you see, not only the United States, but its allies and other countries withdrew simultaneously as well. The U.S. consulate in Beijing and in Chinese territory were no longer in operation. Recently, there were a few forums that said the epidemic in Vietnam is over. But why do the United States allies, leading by the U.S., order their people to return to the United States? All consulates in Vietnam, in Beijing, and across China are closed. So other countries had followed the footsteps of the United States as well. They were the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Japan, South Korea, and many countries in Europe simultaneously closed their consulates. They all withdrew from China as well as from the territory of Vietnam. What will happen next? Some say that Vietnam was out of the pandemic. Why didn't these countries let their people stay in Vietnam instead of retreating? Some said that countries like the United States and its allies were afraid that the outbreak would happen in Vietnam, so they simultaneously called their people to leave Vietnam as soon as possible. I would like to emphasize an important point here. The United States not only closed its consulate across the territory of Chinese communists and in Vietnam territory, They were calling on their expatriates, not only in China and in Vietnam, but also around the world. Whoever have a U.S. citizenship and U.S. permanent residence must return to the United States as soon as possible. That was on a telegram from the U.S. Secretary of State, who sent it more than a week ago. In my opinion, besides being afraid of an outbreak in Vietnam, actually, there are countries that have bigger epidemic compared to Vietnam. The consulate of Germany, France, and European countries have not withdrawn their people at that time, but they withdrew all their expatriates from Vietnam. In my opinion, it is related to a number of issues. The USS Roosevelt aircraft carrier visited Da Nang port more than a month ago. Soon after that, the crew on the aircraft carrier became infected with the coronavirus. Captain Crozier sent a message to request the Minister of Navy to request permission to redirect his aircraft carrier away from the battlefield in the South China Sea to return to dock in the city of San Diego, California. However, when he sent the message to the United States Navy Secretary, he did not use the encrypted channel, which is a secure line that is protected by the U.S. Department of Defense. The message was sent through an unsecure line, and the information was revealed to the public. The USS Roosevelt whereabouts cannot be revealed to foreign countries or to the media. It was the captain's mistake not to use the encrypted line to send a message to the Secretary of the United States, asking permission to have the USS Roosevelt leave its fighting position in the South China Sea and return to dock in San Diego to quarantine some of the infected sailors. Because of this incident, Captain Crozier was released from his duties and replaced with a new captain. In the end, the USS Roosevelt was not allowed to return to dock at San Diego, but it returned to Guam Island. The sailors who were infected were taken to the U.S. Naval Base on Guam Island for isolation. The new captain of the Roosevelt has returned to battlefield position with the 7th Fleet in the South China Sea. In my point of view, Captain Crozier was dismissed because he was not careful in transmitting information to his commanders, which was the U.S. Secretary of the Navy. He cannot use a regular email so that the information leaked out to the media. If the U.S. media and other media around the world knew the information, then the intelligence agency of the United States enemies and allies would know as well. In the itinerary of the USS Roosevelt cannot be revealed at all cost. The itinerary of the USS Roosevelt cannot be revealed at all costs to the United States foes or even friends. Because of this negligence, the captain was dismissed. The Roosevelt aircraft carrier has brought all the infected sailors to Guam Island for isolation. Currently, the Roosevelt has returned to combat in the South China Sea to be present with the 7th Fleet to fight. Back to considering the situation that the United States withdrew all embassies in China and Vietnam. Just like a month ago, many people asked me, Master, you had said that the war between the United States and China was inevitable and shooting would occur. And when the shooting takes place, when will it take place? In a live stream session about a month ago, I said that the day the U.S. Embassy started to close out and withdrew all its staff in Chinese Communist and Vietnamese territory, that will be the day the war will be prepared. That's what I have said a month ago. But remember, that was my personal thought. And I am well aware that Captain Crozier has been removed from the office. He was officially accused by the U.S. and world media outlets that he was not careful in sending information unencrypted to his superiors. He asked permission to change direction to the Roosevelt to bring the infected crew of his ship back to quarantine in the city of San Diego, California. In my opinion, the real reason that he made him in trouble was because he moved out of the combat position. There were 7 aircraft carriers called the 7th Fleet. It is the most powerful fleet of the United States in the South China Sea. Whether the Roosevelt returned to San Diego port or not, it did not cause any operational problems because U.S. naval forces are in the South China Sea. But why is it so important not to reveal its itinerary? Because of the intimate war. The aircraft carrier must be in the South China Sea to prepare to confront the Chinese Communists and defend Taiwan. In addition, the USS Fleet presence in the Eastern Sea to keep the Communist Chinese in line. So, besides sending messages through an unsecured channel and revealing Roosevelt's turning route, the captain also violated some operational rules as well, asking permission from the U.S. Secretary of the Navy to allow him to turn the fleet to Guam for isolation of infected sailors is not that critical. Sending messages through improper channels and revealing the course of the Roosevelt is not a good thing. Looking at this situation, the United States is the first country that has called on its people to leave Vietnam and from China. It also closed its embassy and all the diplomatic staff. You see, that is not simple. If withdrawing because of the epidemic, there was no need to close the consulate, and some staff would still stay behind to work as well. However, they closed all their consulates in China and Vietnam. This shows that there are more important things that will happen. It was not just because being afraid of getting infected with the Chinese virus. The next thing I saw is the UK following the US footsteps. The British embassy stood at Noi Bai airport, and he managed to call all British citizens to leave Vietnam as soon as possible. And now the other countries also proceeds with the same protocol. The United States allies and other countries are now condemning the Chinese communists. Most countries withdrew and closed their embassies and staff out of Vietnam and China. Based on this event, my fellow Vietnamese, you should prepare because war is about to happen, and this war will be very cruel. Although Vietnam is a sovereign and a territorial country, the whole world knows it is operated by Xi Jinping. So when the war happens with Chinese communists in the South China Sea, I emphasize my prediction that it will happen in the South China Sea. Chinese communists would not attack Taiwan because fighting Taiwan will make the rebels' force in the mainland leans toward Taiwan. On the document, Taiwan is a province of China, even though President Tsai Ing-wen has changed the name on the passport as Republic of Taiwan. However, President Tsai did not declare independence, so when China is invading Taiwan, Taiwan will fight back to liberate Beijing. And the factions who are opposing Xi Jinping they will surrender to Taiwan and become a non-communism China. For those in Vietnam, I do not know what else to do for you. I can only tell you to prepare food for 3 to 6 months, not to sell your rice. Farmers in the Mekong Delta, please try to protect your health because this pandemic will break out in Vietnam. I have been talking to many disciples of mine who are working in the US CDC organization. They said that they have a statistic of the infected cases around the world. The CDC assessed that they have concluded that Chinese and Vietnamese communists conceal the real statistics of the infected case. According to their source, by now Vietnam has 1 million infected cases, and the number of deaths is no less than 70 to 80,000. Therefore, please be careful. If there are indeed only a few hundred infected in Vietnam and no casualties, then the Vietnamese communists would not close all commercial businesses and blockade the whole of Vietnam, because doing so hurts the economy very much. If only 100 people were infected and no deaths were reported, no government with the right mind would do something crazy like the Vietnamese government did. Many billions of dollars are lost because they are unable to sell lottery tickets and manufacturing facilities are closed. You should use your head to think about the real reason the U.S. consulates and its allies withdrew from Vietnam. You know well that apart from the outbreak, there will also be a war. In World War II, Japanese Air Force attacked Hawaii and killed 2,000 U.S. soldiers stationed in Pearl Harbor. The United States did not ignore it. Then, Bin Laden used 2 airplanes to destroy the 2 skyscrapers of the United States to kill around 3,000 Americans. The United States made him pay for that crime. Hitler was the one who created the war and raided all of Europe. In the end, Hitler was defeated by the Allied troops. If Hitler was still alive, he would be condemned because of the genocide. Polish people, French people, Belgian people, Hungarian people, along with over 20 other countries in Europe, including British people. The U.S. troops joined the war to liberate Europe from the Nazi. The genocide caused by the Nazi is a big crime, but they hadn't killed the whole world. The Chinese virus has spread to many countries around the world. Several intelligence agencies in the world have confirmed that the Chinese Communists has a conspiracy of using germicidal weapons to attack all over the world. As of now, there are over 180 countries infected and considered the Chinese Communists as a foe, and they will not leave the Chinese Communists alone. When the pandemic is contained and the vaccine is available, the Chinese Communists, and especially Xi Jinping, will have to pay an expensive price. Because this is a crime of genocide all over the world, unlike Pol Pot killed 3 million Cambodians, Mao Zedong genocide the Chinese, Ho Chi Minh killed 7 million Vietnamese, Japanese Francis killed 2 million people, starved to death in Vietnam. This time, the Chinese Communists has committed a crime to all of humanity on this planet. Therefore, this war cannot happen because the current number of infections in the United States has reached nearly 300,000. The U.S. CDC has predicted the death toll will be between 140 to 200,000 people. During the Vietnam War between 1965 to 1973, there were 60,000 of the United States soldiers who had been dead. Now only one in a short period of time. There are over 10,000 Americans who have died. According to the CDC's estimates, the death toll could reach more than 240,000. This war will be unavoidable. If China wants to avoid the civil war, Xi Jinping will have to launch a war with the US and other Western countries. So once again, the people in the country try to store food, protect your children and yourselves' health through this great tribulation. Respectfully yours, and see you again in the next update related to the world situation and destiny of Vietnam. I want to make it clear that the Chinese Communist Party will collapse, and so will the Vietnamese Communists. We will be free in a future day not too far. Farewell.